Bro, authoritarianism is never justifiable. That much is true. But what you consider to be authoritarian, or what level of authoritarianism is like going to always happen in any form of governance is where you and I have disagreements, probably, I would suspect. Now, I'm not saying that the Chinese level of authoritarianism is adequate or acceptable. I'm not saying that at all. But I do believe that if you look at it from like an anarchist perspective, all matter of states is going to have unjustifiable hierarchies. They're going to always reinforce unjustifiable hierarchies. They're going to do governance. Governance is authoritarian inherently. Depending on how fucking anarchist you are, showers could be considered an unjustifiable social construct that is being reinforced by capitalist society. They want you to be clean. They want you to be presentable. You know what I mean? Let's continue with Tucker Carlson. Fox's war on the woke mind virus.
This is a virus. It's infectious. It destroys your brain. Almost every corner of our society is now sort of being infected with some of this wokeness. When woke infects something, it spreads its tentacles. We're seeing a woke ideology spread like a disease. So wokeness is very potent.
Look, this is, I don't disagree with this. Where is it? Hold on. Before we move on, last thing about the China conversation. The economic system of state capitalism, if that's what you want to call it, has objectively been hugely successful system over the Western style imposed on the third world. Yes, that engine also runs with nationalistic fervor. That is the downside of such. That is the legitimate downside of it. Okay, you have to be a little bit of a Han supremacist in order for this to like work out. There needs to be some kind of like additional spiritual glue that is idealistic and not inherently materialistic for it to work, in the sense that. In the way that it does. Something has to make people go, you know what? I feel like we're prospering together, and that's working. The fuck are you on about Han supremacy? It's not Han supremacy necessarily, but it's just like, okay, let's just say nationalistic supremacy. Like, we're all in it together. We're all working together. If you think that like the average Chinese person is considering like uplifting the working class globally, you're out of your mind. That's not the goal. If that was the case, then they would not be already shifting their resources over to other developing nations in an effort to ensure that they still have a decent profit margin for their manufacturing that they've set up so far. It's just, that's how it is. The state is not an infallible institution, and there aren't any like adequate safeguards. Okay, there aren't super adequate safeguards against like a government that could decide to be like super corrupt and not actually take care of its citizens. And then the only safeguard in that regard, and this is something that Slavoj Žižek talks about. Okay, there's two different methods of control. You have the neoliberal method of control, and then you have the more authoritarian method of control, right? But in the authoritarian structure, in the authoritarian information dissemination, you always understand that the state is basically controlling you. You get it. You recognize it. In the neoliberal structure, you don't understand the state is controlling you. You don't understand that capitalist interests are controlling your lives, and you have this level of freedom, or this level of perceived freedom, if you will. Okay? So the downside of the authoritarian, if you want to consider it that, the authoritarian level of control comes with people understanding that there is always that arm of the state that's holding you down. So when the state fucks up and the state decides not to genuinely improve your lives, and then you lose confidence in the state, like many Americans have lost confidence in the American state under the neoliberal methods of control, okay, you rise up and you rebel and you burn shit down. In the neoliberal method of control, when you lose confidence in the state taking care of you, you don't do anything with that anger. There is no mechanism, because you don't even know that you're being controlled to begin with. If your concept is that like no such control should ever exist, well, there has never been an institution. There's never been a form of cohabitation, no form of organizing, no form of governance that has destroyed that form of control. It's going to happen whether you recognize it or you don't. Historical teleology shows a trend towards more centralized systems being able to solve an even more complex problems. Just like capitalism came out of the failure of feudalism to deal with more complex crises, state capitalism is slightly more able to deal with modern complex crises. Yes. And if you want to be super, super, super charitable, then the state does not get destroyed overnight, but it ceases to exist when there is no need for it, I guess, which is why communism is supposed to be a stateless, classless, moneyless society. The end goal, if you will, that you finally get to after a transitional state of socialism. Communism is not stateless. I mean, it's borderless, so what the fuck are you talking about? What is a state without borders, money, anything? The way that you understand states would not exist under communism. If it's borderless, if it's moneyless, and if it's classless, then it's technically stateless. You can have the concept of a state if you want to have like a different flavor around it, but ultimately it would not exist. Now we're going to get to Fox's war on the woke mind virus, though. I think that's more fun to cover than anything else. All right, let's do it.
Woke mindset virus. The wokeness, this is all we should be talking about. Californians are getting woke. Yeah, I'm in a woke city here. Small towns are under siege from left-wing wokeness as well. The woke sensibility has everybody on the run. Woke celebrities are coming out in droves. Young so woke, he actually canceled himself. Colin Kaepernick, LeBron James, all of them are super woke. Active David Schwimmer is getting majorly woke. Harry caught the brain virus, so went completely insane, became woke, and then became bloodthirsty. We're woke out of our minds, vomiting out every woke platitude, eating each other alive, because people aren't woke enough. The woke monster is here, and it's coming for everything. Cinderella, they've given it a big woke makeover. Maybe not feeling woke, she's gonna be wearing a pantsuit, and James Bond gets a makeover from the woke left. You make a woke little 007, men will turn in. We are attracted to other masses.
I mean, this is what you talk about if you don't have state propaganda be like the primary mode of information dissemination. How do you look to this and go, wow, this is like, I mean, there's a specific purpose for this. And by the way, for the record, for those of you who don't know, and this might come as a surprise to many, I differ from a lot of other Marxists and socialists because I do believe that the neoliberal methods of control are more permanent and ensure stability. It's true. People need coffee. People need coffee beans. You know what I mean? You just got to supply them with that. You got to supply people with the notion that they have freedom. Stability for whom? Stability for systems to exist. Yes, commodity consumption is better at satiation of a population than direct threats. Absolutely. If you want to convince someone, it's better to make it seem like they came up with that idea on their own than it is to tell them what to do. That is the neoliberal dad, communist dad, I guess, argument. It is better to make people feel like they came up with the idea. If your end goal is to try and get someone to do something, then it is infinitely better and more sustainable to build a system around making people feel like they have freedom. What good is socialism if it does not give you jalapeno poppers is my take.